We are recording. All right, so before we begin today's Pure Connections, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we live and work on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we must recognize the importance of the land and our treaty agreements. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples. As our spinal cord injury community encompasses many geographies, we ask that everyone take a few moments of their day to find out which unceded territory or treaty land on which they live. You can use the link www.native-land.ca to learn more. All right. As I mentioned, my name is Brett Babcock. I'm a peer support coordinator with Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, based in Ottawa. I'm really looking forward to today's presentation. We have Joshua Dorfkin here with us to talk about disability, identity, and mental health. Joshua, I'll let you take it from here to introduce yourself, and I will monitor the chat. So I will
Sure.
let you
Thanks a
go.
lot, Brett. I'm very happy to be here with everyone today. Thanks for having me. My name is Joshua Dvorkin. I am a psychotherapist and coach, and I work with people navigating disability, spinal cord injury, and other chronic health conditions. I help them reclaim their voices, find new opportunities and possibilities with staying aligned to their values and beliefs. So, yeah, thank you again for having me today. So, I always like to take the first few seconds of any talk to look around at people because after everything we've all been through, illness, burnout, disability in life, and whatever the last season of our lives might have entailed, the fact that we're even in this room together sometimes can feel like a miracle. And I look at all of you, and you got here, you could have canceled, and yes, you could have stayed at home, but you chose to show up, and showing up is the first step in anyone's healing story that I've ever witnessed. As I said, my name is Joshua, and I'm here to talk about something that we all understand, but most of us struggle with, which is resilience. And it's certainly not the Instagram kind of resilience. It's not the sunrise over the mountain kind. I mean the real kind, the messy, unromantic, and I didn't ask for this, but I'm here kind. People always ask me about my injury like it's a movie trailer. So, what happened? And they lean in like I'm about to tell them a story that's involving ninjas, a helicopter, or some heroic backflip. And the truth is, yeah, no, it wasn't cinematic. I was just like doing what life does sometimes, changes everything without warning. One day I had a body that followed instructions, and the next day it didn't. And those first days, there wasn't a soundtrack. There wasn't a moment where I stared into the distance and said, I will rise again. No, there was just beeping machines and really awkward conversations and nurses who couldn't lift me with one hand and judge me with the other. There was the shock and the fear and the grief, and then there was this moment, and then the tiny, ridiculous human moment where I realized, oh, I'm gonna have to learn to do everything absolutely all over again, like a baby, but with more paperwork. And here's the thing, everybody in this room knows that moment. Your story might be a little bit different. You might be a paraplegic. You might be, you might have an injury in a different spot, but we're all struggling, whether we're looking for jobs or losing for a dream. We obviously all woke up one day, not being able to do the same thing anymore. Wow, this is not the life that I ordered. In that moment, the world doesn't match the picture that we have in our head. That's where resilience begins, with strength, with positivity, but with honesty. Now, I used to be the king of fixing. If something was wrong, I'd Google it. I guess now I chat GPT it, optimize it, spreadsheet it. My copying style was basically being really aggressively organized. But the hilarious thing is when your body changes permanently, you can't really optimize your way out of that. And that's when I learned the most painful and liberating truth in my life is resilience isn't about fixing yourself. It's about meeting yourself where you are in the present moment. Let me tell you, I really didn't want to meet myself. I wanted the old model, low mileage, no obvious defects, and it was reasonably stylish. But the universe says, surprise, you're updating whether you really want to or not. And I wish that I could tell you that there was this moment where I said, I've got this, that there was swelling music and a montage and, a heroic smile. But no, there was no music. There was just machines and fear and a lot of terrible hospital food. So here's the truth. No one puts up motivational posters. And yes, it was absolutely terrifying. I'm sure you all know that. It was messy and it was certainly real. But that's why I'm here today, not to give you this glossy version of resilience, but to talk about what it looks like when life knocks you flat and says, okay, now what? But resilience isn't pretending that everything's fine. It's what you choose to do in the middle of the mess that counts, right? Look, everyone has a story. Maybe it wasn't a hospital bed for some people, but it was for all of us. And that's why we're here to talk about what I call resilience without romanticism, the kind that doesn't ask you to sugarcoat your pain or call it a blessing before it's even finished breaking you open. Now, here's where I need to ruin those pop up culture ideas. Resilience is not about bouncing back because you're not a basketball. You don't bounce back, but you do move forward, changed. The old you doesn't come back, and that's okay because healing isn't erasure. It's what I call reclamation. We've all been sold this lie that strength means smiling through it or staying positive or saying that everything happens for a reason. But sometimes not everything happens for a good reason. There's no good reason at all. And that's the part that we never say out loud, but acknowledging this truth, that's one step towards real resilience. So, the three pillars of resilience without romanticism are first acknowledging or facing the truth without denial, and then integration. So, we integrate or weave the pain of the truth into our story. And then reclamation is choosing what comes next on purpose. So let me unpack that for you a little bit for a second. Acknowledgement means that you stop fighting reality. It's not giving up, it's just saying, okay, this has happened, now what? You can't really change what you won't face, right? So we have to take, if not accountability, then at least some radical acceptance. So, integration means you don't shove the pain into a closet labeled, let's not speak of this again, but you learn from it. You make it part of your wisdom. You don't make it your wound. And reclamation, that's when you start taking your story back and when you stop letting your pain speak louder than your power. You see, when my injury happened, I thought resilience meant walking again, moving again, getting my life back. But over time, I realized my life wasn't gone. It was just waiting for that time for me to stop fighting and creating what could be. That shift from survival to creation, that's what changed everything. And it certainly didn't happen overnight. And it came from a process of what I now call the de-stress method, a framework that I built from years of trial, therapy, mistakes, breakdowns, and breakthroughs. It's not pretty, but it certainly works. Because as I said earlier, it meets you where you actually are, not where you were. Are you ready to go there with me? Let's dive in. So, the de stress method, DSTRESS method, It's not a product and it's not a secret formula. It's what I lived through when my life actually fell apart. And later, when I started working with people who faced trauma, spinal cord injury, and other chronic illnesses, I realized that, oh, this isn't just me, it's actually a roadmap. So as I said, it's DSTRESS. It's kind of funny that the word stress is literally inside the method because let's be honest, stress isn't something we get rid of, especially not in this situation. It's part of our lives. If you've never been stressed, you're probably not trying hard enough or you're a houseplant. So here's what it really means. Let's take it apart. So D, which is define the challenge honestly. So most of us skip this step. We go straight to panic, blame, or denial. But defining the challenge honestly is how we reclaim our clarity. Instead of my whole life is falling apart, try I'm feeling overwhelmed this week. Notice the difference. One is drama and the other one is data. The distinction saves so much energy. When I was lying in that hospital bed, the problem wasn't my life is over. It was that my body doesn't move, my mind does. So, what can I really do with that? The honest question became the beginning of my possibility. Um, so, I'm going to skip to the end for a second, where S is slow down and breathe. When we're stressed, our nervous system flips to the emergency switch. Our heart races, our muscles tighten, and our brain says, we're all going to die, even when the threat might just be an email. So before reacting, slow down and breathe. Let's actually try this here actually for a second. So inhale through your nose and hold it, and then exhale through your mouth. See, good. Nobody exploded. That small pause creates a gap, and that gap is where resilience lives. Now let's get back on track. Here's the T. So we want to track your thoughts and triggers. So you can't manage what you don't see. So I started paying attention to what set me off. What stories I was telling myself, like I'm useless, I'm a burden, and I'll never be the same. Those weren't facts, they were just narratives. So when I started tracking them, and I mean literally journaling what happened, today made me this tense. I discovered that the story I told myself about my life was far more painful than my actual circumstances. That's when I realized awareness is the first step to freedom, that gift that human beings have to think about what we think about. So the R was to reframe my limiting beliefs, or all of us should do that in general. This one's huge because it's where the transformation really begins. And once you see the thought, you get to challenge it. You get to ask, is this thought absolutely true? What else could be true? I used to think fear meant stop. Now I know it just means it's time to pay attention. That's the reframe. And that reframe led me somewhere I never expected to be. And that's onto a stage. When I was invited to perform in Born by Judith Thompson, I thought, cool, a chance to stretch creatively. Maybe I'll look mysterious under stage lights. What I didn't expect is that it would become one of the deepest healing experiences of my life. I remember the first rehearsal, the directors describing this raw emotional scene, and I could feel my chest tighten. And that old voice whispered, you can't do this. You're going to fall apart. You're going to make a fool of yourself. And in that moment, I caught it, the voice of the old frame. Instead of saying, I can't handle this, I whispered to myself, this fear means that you're going to grow. And because my mantra, and this became my mantra through the whole process. Opening night came faster than I was ready for. Backstage, I could hear the hum of the audience and the buzz, the whisper, and the soft of the of electricity before the lights came up. Every nerve in my body was alive. Part of me wanted to disappear. I even thought at one point that I was going to go dyslexic. But another part, a quieter, truer part, whispered, "You've come too far to hide now." The lights rose, and I wheeled onto the stage, and for a moment, everything went silent. Every fear, every doubt you'll never, ever that I carried for years was right there with me. But I took a breath, slow and steady, and I began to speak. And with each word, something shifted. It wasn't about performing anymore, it was about being seen. Each night for 23 nights in a row, I told that story to sold out crowds. And somehow between night one and night 23, the stage stopped feeling like a test and started feeling like my home. Because that's what happens when you tell the truth enough times. Fear loses its grip, and the thing that once terrifies you becomes the thing that sets you free. By the final performance, I wasn't acting, but I was inhabiting. I realized that healing doesn't have to happen behind closed doors. Sometimes it happens right there under the lights through the act of expression. The next letter in de-stress is E, which is engage with a supportive community. That experience taught me another key piece, which is engagement. We heal through connection, not isolation. If I tried to do that show alone, if I hadn't had a director, castmates, friends cheering me on, I would have quit by rehearsal number two. We need to have people who see through our strength when we ourselves have forgotten about it. Support doesn't make you weak, it only keeps you human. The first S is for setting micro goals that keep momentum and build it too. Theater gave me that as well. Every night, just one small goal. Just make it through scene two without hyperventilating. Then, okay, let's not try to ugly cry before the curtain call. Micro goals keep you moving. They turn mountains into steps. And each small step tells your brain we're still in motion. Yes, we are alive. The last S, sustain yourself with self compassion, is the most important one. Resilience is not about toughness, it's about tenderness. It's knowing that voice that says, I can't. It's usually just the part of you that's scared. So you meet that voice with kindness. You say, it's okay, you can be scared, but we're going to do this anyway. Because courage doesn't mean that you stop feeling fear, it just means you decide to show up with it. That's what the stage taught me. Fear didn't disappear, it just stopped driving. Now, whenever I face something that terrifies me, a talk like this, a new project, an unknown future, I look at fear and I say, sure, you can't ride with me, but this time you just don't get to drive. That's the core of de-stress. Define, slow down, track, reframe, engage, set, sustain, simple, real, and lived. It's not about removing chaos, it's about creating the calm within the middle of it. And it's about realizing that resilience is not a solo act, it is an ensemble performance. You, your fear, your community, and your compassion all on the same page and on the same stage. Now, I want to bring this back home because it's not enough to understand resilience in theory. You have to have lived it like all of us. So, in the next part, we'll put this in your hands. So, you've listened to me share a lot. Stories about hospital rooms, fear, theater lights, a bunch of deep breathing, but now I want to bring it back to you because this isn't just my story. This is the part where you start to see your own reflection inside of it. I want you to take a second right now and think of one of the challenges that you've been silently carrying. It might be something to do with your disability, something to do with a different diagnosis or feeling burnt out, a heartbreak, a dream you've buried under someday, whatever it is. I want you to bring it to your mind. Now, define it honestly, not dramatically, not catastrophically, just truthfully. That's the first step of resilience with romanticism. No inspirational soundtrack required, just honesty. Now, if you were to apply one piece of this method I just taught you, which would it be? Would you slow down and breathe? Would you reframe a belief that took you hostage? Would you reach out for help instead of white knuckling it alone? Or maybe you would just give yourself permission to take a break. Whatever your answer is, that's your starting point. And that's where my rehab started. Rehab is this magical place where you discover your muscles you haven't met yet. Your dignity goes missing daily, and the therapists have the confidence of Beyonce. I remember one therapist saying, Joshua, we're going to teach you how to balance. Balance? Lady, I was just struggling with gravity, but that day, that first wobbling, ridiculous, hopeful day, something inside me shifted. Because balance isn't just a physical skill, it's an emotional one. It's the moment you realize you can be terrified and still move forward. So I hear the same three sentences over and over and over when people are considering to get support. I always hear, I can't afford it. I'm not sure it'll work for me. I don't know if I have the time. And listen, these are all real, and I understand. Those are all human. But underneath those sentences, I often hear something much deeper. I'm scared. I'm scared to hope. I'm scared to try again. I'm scared to change. Scared that if it works, I'll have to become someone braver, louder, softer, or more honest than I've ever been. And I want to know this: fear doesn't mean that you're not ready. Fear means you're standing at the doorway of something that matters. Most people don't lack time, they just lack safety. Their nervous system is overloaded, their belief in themselves is weathered, and the real question is not, can I afford it? The real question is, what is it costing me to stay here today? Staying anxious costs peace, staying overwhelmed costs relationships, and staying stuck costs the life you could be living. And yes, investment feels big because you're big. Your transformation is big. But on the other side, there's confidence, there's emotional regulation, there's freedom, there's presence, there's the moment where you wake up and think, oh, I'm actually living my life again. One of the first times I stood on stage to share my story, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own voice. It felt like I was back in the hospital, exposed, uncertain, scared, but here's the difference. This time I chose it because I learned that freedom doesn't come from comfort, it lives on the other side of fear. That night I wasn't performing, I was connecting, and that connection, that human to human recognition, was healing in itself. For the first time, my story wasn't just mine, it was ours. After years of personal healing, I finally wanted to understand the science behind it. Why does vulnerability transform us? Why does facing pain make the brain rewire itself toward growth? So I went back to school and I earned my master's in psychology, not because I needed another title, but because I wanted to build a bridge between what I knew in my body and what I could prove through the science. I'd already lived the story. Now I wanted to understand the system. Not long after that, I got a call. Someone working with Trevor Morris, yes, the 5-time Emmy Award nominated, 2-time Emmy Award winning composer, asked if I wanted to consult on his debut short film called Butterfly on a Wheel. The project explored how music and mental health intertwine. It's about emotion, resilience, and the way sound can move the soul toward healing. Standing at the Tip Bell Light box surrounded by the artists, the creators, and watching this film come to life, I realized something profound. I had gone from being the one in the hospital bed to being one of those people helping the others understand healing itself. That moment wasn't just about art, it was about arrival. It was about the circle completing itself. I wasn't the same person who once lay there wondering if life would ever begin again. I had integrated both versions of myself, the one who had fought for survival and the one who had learned how to live. The old me didn't die, he evolved. The new me didn't replace him, but he had made peace with him. When pain transforms into purpose, it stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. That's when I knew I had become a healing cord for myself, for others, a lived example that freedom truly does live on the other side of fear. Avoidance promises safety, but it only delivers limitation. Discomfort promises growth, and it delivers freedom. Every time you face what scares you, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And when you do that, you don't just heal your own life, you light the way for somebody else who's trying to find theirs. So if you remember nothing else, I want you to remember this: freedom lives on the other side of fear. Walk toward it because the life waiting for you there is the one that you were always meant to live. So here's what I hope you take away. Not that I'm strong and not that I'm special, not that I did something extraordinary. I want you to walk out of here thinking, if he can rise in this story, maybe I can rise in mine. Because resilience isn't a gift, it's just a muscle. And you build it the same way that you build any muscle, with tiny, wobbly, imperfect steps. And you don't have to do it beautifully. You just have to do it honestly. So if you're on the floor right now, emotionally, physically, spiritually, I'm not here to tell you to be positive. I'm just here to tell you that you can start exactly where you are: scared, shaking, unsure, hopeful, human. And that is enough. That's always enough. So thanks. Um, Now I've got a few slides I can share after that talk. So let me share my screen with you um, slowly. Just take a second. Um, I just don't want to lose this window. Okay. Give me a second while I reorganize my screen here. Okay. Okay. So everyone can unmute now. You can unmute everyone now if you want. I'm like open to questions and stuff as we go through this. I don't know if that's. Oh,
There we go.
all right. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so obviously we know that like disability includes so many different things, right? So cognitive, sensory, mental health, invisible, physical. Uh, sorry, the bottom of the slides got cut off. Um, so and it involves our bodies, the environment that we live in, and it involves a significant portion of the population, right? So, and I'm including chronic illness in this as well. Um, I think as people with disabilities, we inherit chronic illnesses unfortunately sooner than other people. Um, so um, and as people with disabilities, we face significantly higher rates of mental health challenges than other people. Um, so 37% of people with the SCI experience depression compared to about 8% of the Canadian population. Um, same with anxiety, 25% with post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can kind of see the white bars here as a general population, where the gold bars here kind of show the disability proportionate population, and it's uh, over double, if not triple, quadruple in some of the situations. And a lot of the risk factors are isolation, chronic pain, all of the secondary complications that we have to deal with, going to the hospital and the wait times. And some of us don't have family doctors that are knowledgeable in the areas that we need them to be. I was talking to Jillian Brett earlier about a situation that I just had. I had a suprapubic catheter put in on October 1st. Um, and after leaving my urologist's office, I didn't get any aftercare, so I didn't have to even know how to look after it properly. So I tried to follow up the next day. I didn't hear back, and it was before the October long weekend. And I by the Tuesday, I woke up with a fever. I had to go to emergency because I didn't hear back from my doctor, even though I followed up with him that day. I followed up with him when I got back from emergency. So it took from the 1st of October till the 16th of October, and me calling his office 5 times, and the patient experience office 3 times at the hospital. And then I finally got an order to Ontario Health at Home, where I was supposed to have a nurse at my house within 12 hours of October 16th. And I actually didn't receive any nursing care at home until November 3rd. Um, so I ended up writing and calling the Ministry of Health, the Deputy Minister of Health, my MP, my MPP, um, and the only person that called me back was Kristen Wong Tam when I live in downtown Toronto, which I'm grateful for that. But she said the Ministry of Health would call me back. I'm still waiting for that phone call. So um, yeah, it's things like that that make our situation very frustrating. So it's often, we become our own best doctors. Um, so, secondary health complications and mental health impact is also huge, right? So we all know about our secondary health complications and, things like AD, pressure ulcers, chronic pain, and bladder and bowel dysfunction. And these things only heighten our mental health issues, as I'm sure you're all aware of. I kind of save the slides just in case I have room for it because they don't really tell a lot of new information unless you've got a new injury, right? So, and I'm sure for those of you who work in the field, you're just as frustrated with having minimal resources, and trying to help more people. Um, you know, and in my case, it's like, I'm not funded, you know, so it's like people with spinal cord injury, like for SCIO and stuff like that, I always like give like a good deal because I know it's difficult for people to afford it unless they're working. So, for people on ODSP, please reach out, and I definitely, if you need some help, I'm happy to help out. Um, yeah, so housing also difficult thing to come by. Those of you who've been out Lyndhurst, I know I waited several weeks. Some people I've heard have waited months for housing, right? So, you can be stuck living in a long-term care hospital while you're waiting for housing, which does not do good things for your mental health, right? So, a system that is not built for us, or a society, I should say, that is not built for us only exacerbates, our feeling of isolation and our feeling of not fitting in. So, um, you know, I think it's important that those of us who have high levels of resilience, you know, try and help out everybody else. Um, so, um, and then life expectancy and long-term health challenges. I'm sure lots of us hopefully don't focus on these things, but I'm sure lots of people do focus on. I know lots of people focus on these things, and lots of people worry, and it creates anxiety for a lot of people. A lot of people get depressed about what the future and suffering might look like, right? So this also, not to be dismal and down, but it's just, you know, hopefully things don't work out in that manner of being. We all have great, healthy lives, and I hope everyone is taking the best care of themselves now to ensure of that. Um, you know, because I believe, we're pretty much on par for the most part. Um, but yeah, I definitely, we do have risks of coronary disease because we lead sedentary lives, some of us, and that type of thing. So, um, rebuilding mastery and self-confidence, the ability that we have, or the belief that we have the ability to conquer all the goals that we have in mind for ourselves, right? It takes a lot of time to develop that belief again because we lose a lot of our control after our injury, right? So by losing what we call, I guess in psychology, our locus of control, or our ability to control our environment, really takes a hit on our self-confidence, and then the ability that we're going to be able to achieve our goals, whatever those may be, within our lifetime. And a lot of us, because at first we have, wherever we're at ripped out from underneath our feet, we think, well, what else am I going to want to do? So, um, I've coined a part of coaching I do called reclamation coaching, which is basically reclaiming our stories by looking at similar beliefs and values to what we had before, and jobs or opportunities and possibilities that align with those similar beliefs and values. So other things that we can do, that don't really stray and are still authentic with who we are as people. um, Employment and education, another mental health impact, right? So, obviously, um, there's a lot of people with SCI, I think, that have a lot of education, um, that maybe aren't as employed as other people. Well, I know it's a fact. Um, I think the gap is narrowing a little bit. But this can have an effect on people as well, right? Because everybody wants to feel like they have purpose, and I think it's really important to feel like we have purpose. And there's definitely different dynamics to purpose and how we can feel utilized in society, whether it be as simple as doing nice things for people, nice things for ourselves, volunteering. It doesn't have to be through just paid work, but it is really nice to be able to make some extra money if you're just on ODSP. And then we talk about addiction and substance use in people with disabilities and other chronic illnesses. They are certainly higher. People wanting to numb not only chronic pain, but numb life in general, bow out of the way things are and not have to deal with the truth. So we're looking at general population here versus people with chronic pain, mental health disabilities, spinal cord injury, and developmental disabilities. So now, as a person with a spinal cord injury, a lot of us have chronic pain and mental health complications as well. So we're looking at the three kind of group together. So when you've got more than one thing on your plate, um, it can create a lot to deal with sometimes. Um, so, finding personal support workers also can create a lot of mental anxiety, depending on your what type of services you're on, whether you're with STILT or whether you're on direct funding or um, yeah, so, or whether you're living in a direct care facility or some type of apartment. Um, so, stress management, relaxation techniques are really important, meditation, social support, physical activity, and professional help, they're all important. Um, you know, I think that they all have their place for different people. Um, and I think really psychotherapy has a role for everybody, not just people who are, um, have mental illness. I think it's a great sounding board, just generally for people, for having somebody unbiased in your life who doesn't know you, and can guide you in a specific direction, answer questions, um, whether it's one session or whether it's two sessions, or whether you've got, are going through CBT and it's 6 or 8 sessions. There's different things for different people, right? Um, So yeah, there's navigating lots of systems, and I find as we move forward in time, these systems are becoming more and more broken, so I find a lot of these systems don't really communicate well with one another, which I'm sure a lot of us are aware of. So, that is, healthcare, disability benefits, housing support, vocational rehab, and equipment funding. Um, and I think funding is, in general, is becoming more difficult to come by, as well as healthcare. Disability benefits have gotten a little bit better, which is great. Um, I would say housing is probably still, I don't know because I don't, I think it's still about just as difficult as ever. Um, Yeah, and then so I'll just touch on my business a little bit. So we do individual therapy, trauma-informed care, family support, cognitive behavioral therapy. We do, where all of the therapists are, we have disability informed practice. Um, I'm the only person actually sitting in a wheelchair, but there are other people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. So, um, you know, so I was telling you guys a little bit about reclamation coaching. I see people in person and I also see people virtually. Um, if anybody wants to reach out to me or knows anybody, With a disability that is on ODSP, I'm more than willing to offer sliding scale to people on ODSP. Um, and yeah, I'll do that for sure. Not a problem. And yeah, so we specialize in chronic illness, disability support, stress and trauma recovery, life transitions, and LGBTQ2S plus support, and anxiety and depressive disorders. Um, yeah. So just some inspirational figures to look at. So, you guys know that it's possible to, I know sometimes we all get inside of our head and forget what's really possible. And, there's so many people with disabilities out there who have great, fabulous lives. I know the bottom got cut off. There's Christopher Reeves down there. And some of us never really take the time to think of these people, right? So, um, um, which is it's great sometimes to do a little bit of research and you know, um, so if you or someone is struggling with mental health challenges or disability, chronic illness, or spinal cord injury, please reach out. I'll do what I can to like connect to anybody or help anybody out in any way that I can. So um, yeah, I'll open it up for questions now. I just want to thank everybody who came out today to see me. Thanks for coming out. And yeah, I'm totally grateful to be here. So,
Thank you, Joshua. That was great. A good combination of personal or professional personal insights, anecdotes. I'll certainly be applying distress to my own life. We have about 10 minutes if I'm going to open it to the floor to ask some questions. There's one in the chat box that I'll read aloud. Um, what is your approach when people are hesitant in accessing mental health supports or when people see mental health experiences as weakness?
um, okay. So first, like I just said, right? So I have like a lot of clients who seek mental health support. Most of my clients, like a lot of them don't have, I would say, like a diagnosis, right? They might feel depressed. Like I can't diagnose because I'm a psychotherapist, so I could be like, okay, well, you have symptoms that look like depression, right? So, I mean, if you really want to get a clinical diagnosis, you're gonna have to go see either a psychiatrist, which is somebody who can diagnose you, covered by OHIP, or a psychologist, somebody who can diagnose you, which is going to cost you anywhere between $3,000 and $8,000. It's really expensive. Um, I think mental health is nothing to be ashamed of. I think it's actually courageous to come out and really own your own pants. You know what I mean? It's like, come out, let me know who you are. It's like most people honestly become therapists because they've been through something that they feel allows them to offer a service to help other people get through something. Um, is what I found from my own discovery. Um, I haven't found that a lot of people in my specific situation. Um, but most therapists I talk to, don't really share their story so much because in school we're taught not to talk about ourselves or our own lives and to focus on the client. And a lot of the time, I think that is um, the wrong way to take it. I don't think, I'm going to sit here and talk for half the session about myself, but I definitely do know that people where I'm coming from because I think it creates like closer therapeutic alliance or rapport between me and my client. We're actually sitting on the same level and we've been in the same places because I don't claim to be, you know, any better or any I'm not on any different level than anybody else, right? And it's like I never make anybody feel that comes to see me. Um, and I'm sure that for every one good therapist, you might find five bad therapists. Um, so you really shouldn't feel anyway. I'm sure you have just as many good qualities as everybody else, right? So anybody that I think is having a problem or undergoing a specifically hard circumstance, we have this thing where we feel like we're the only one undergoing this circumstance at the time. And it's just by human condition that we feel that way. But when we really think about, that there's like 8 billion other people on the planet, there's got to be other people going through the same exact circumstance or something, honestly, a heck of a lot worse, right? So, um, I always think about not to, this is kind of a morbid thing, but I always try to like, if I'm feeling really bad, I try to think about somebody who's probably doing worse than I am and offer them compassion, you know. Or I try to think about what I'm grateful for in my life, and then I try to send somebody I don't like self-compassion. Um, I always try, life is suffering. As long as we're alive, we are going to suffer. It's just the way, it's how life is, with and without a benefit of a doubt, and we have to try and find, I know I'm a little bit off topic now, but we have to try and find those joys in between, um, that keep want to keep us here, and I think that's the key to it. And having someone there that we can really share those moments with that aren't judging us or don't have a you don't know maybe our story from before, or don't know us from growing up, or don't have a bias built into them about us, is the best place that we can really begin to heal. So I'll leave it there.
It's a great response. Does anyone else have questions? Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, type it in the chat box. I've got one. It's extremely rare to come across a psychotherapist with a disability, let alone spinal cord injury specifically. And, we go through something very traumatic that's very specific. And, people are looking for someone with that background. And I was wondering, do you think that relatability impacts your ability to connect with people with disabilities? And second, because you're in the profession, are you aware of other psychotherapists with disabilities? Is it more common than we think, or is it just difficult in doing the research to find?
No, it's not common. I
Mhm.
I know very few. Like I know, okay, so I know people with other disabilities, like say like Crohn's disease, or um, I think I know like people that are therapists with like HIV, or therapists that have been through cancer, um, things like that. I've never met another therapist in a wheelchair yesterday. I actually had a great experience. I got to do an Instagram live with two people, and they put me in front of their following of 500,000 followers yesterday. Um, because they just thought that they I'm taking a course with them, and they thought my story was great, and they wanted to like promote it because my niche is really small. Because I found that I like to work with people that have been through what I've been through, because um, you know, um, I explained to them how I got into doing therapy for two reasons. One, when I was at Lyndhurst, Keith Walker was the only, I think, psychologist for 61 patients. And it's not enough. Like, everyone there needs to be seen multiple times, in my opinion. We go through way too much without having therapy. And Also, so I'd been on a ventilator for 3.5 months. They told me I'd never get off a ventilator and that I would live in a chronic care facility my whole life. In that moment, I was just like, no way. And so I was like pointing on a letterboard at that point, and I was like, no. I said to the doctor, first of all, I said to him in a four-letter word, and then I said, 10 days from today, I'm going to be off this ventilator. I said, you mark my words. And I said, I'm going to live on my own. So, in 10 days from that day, I kid you not, I was off the ventilator. I was breathing on my own. And I was like, hell, man, my mind is a powerful piece of machinery. I was like, if I can do that, then I must be able to teach other people how to do that too. So, um, that's what I wanted to go to school. I'd already started going to psychology, like my degree in psych when I was 18, but I left it behind. But I guess there's a reason why we go back to what we come from, right? So, is that kind of what you asked me in a way? Is there something?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to know if you had insight if there were more psychotherapists with disabilities that we
Yeah,
just see,
I
but
don't
of
think it's very common, and that's why I like created like a coaching thing as well, because I'm only
course,
licensed to like do psychotherapy in Ontario, right?
of course.
So, but I know there's lots of people with um spinal cord injuries everywhere, right? So I created like a 12-week reclamation coaching thing where it's like I could do it in a group format, I could do it in individual format, whatever people were comfortable with, either so people could learn from others' experiences or just keep it private, you know. Um, and so I put it through that format as well, so I could do it anywhere, because I thought there was a need for that as well. Um, and um, so yeah, I'm sure there are a few other people out there. I know there is somebody mentioned to me that there is one. They're like, you sound like this person. I forget her name though. Um, but she's an author as well and a therapist. And she does have a disability. So I know there's others out there. I just know it's like few and far between. And yes, I do find it helps in therapy because that's the other question you asked, I think. I find um, somebody who's been through what you've been through. I mean, nobody's been through no one can understand it except another person who's been through it. It's like no matter how much my ambulatory friends try and understand what I've been through, they never get it. They can never get it. They might understand bits and pieces of it. I've had friends of mine that were ambulatory have spinal cord injuries since mine, which is a really bizarre experience. But um, it's I've had the opportunity to be there for them, which has been really great. But um, yeah, I think it definitely creates like a bond and a kind of um, a comfortability and a safety that you can't find with another therapist because there's just an understanding of things that you don't have to explain, you know, if that makes sense. Like you would just talk about stuff and I would know what you're talking about. As where if you went to a regular therapist, they would be like, oh, what's this? What's that? And that would be like taking up a lot of money that you're paying time to see them for. So, yeah.
Exactly. The whole explanation of the bodily
Explanation's
changes
tough
that
to
might be
watch.
embarrassing to speak about, bladder, bowel functioning, all of that adds up to mental health. Um, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Everything we experience adds up to mental health,
Mhm.
right? And I think it has everything we experience um, is exhausting. It's empowering and exhausting at the same time, right? I'll
Mhm.
put it that way. It just depends on it in what point of your journey that you're on and what perspective you're looking at it with, you know. Um, so,
I don't see any other. We're a couple minutes over time. I usually go over time. I don't see any
yeah,
other questions. I'll give people maybe a minute if they'd like to raise a hand or type in the chat box. Um,
So I will give everybody this. If anybody wants to find me, I'll do this. You can find me, or if you think of another question while I do this, on Instagram, you can find me in some of my content at headway.mental.health. Um, and I put out lots of content. So, and you can find me on TikTok and um, Facebook at, at Headway Help. So the name of my business is Headway Mental Health. If anybody wants to phone call me directly, you can do that. Even if you just have questions, it's fine. Um, Even if you just want a free consultation and don't want to book a session, that's fine too. I don't mind. It's 416 889 4488. That's my cell number, so you'll get through to me. If you don't want to leave a message, you can call back. That's fine. I understand that as well. Um, so if you go to my Instagram page and you want to follow me, that's fine. If you don't, that's cool too. I do lives and stuff sometimes, not too frequently. Um, but you can DM me the word 7 day, like the letters or the number seven, and then DAY, and you will get a guide to stop negative thinking in 7 days. So that's my gift for you for coming today.
Great. Thank you so much. And if you're scrambling to write this down, don't worry. Julie and I will be sending out a thank you email that will have all this follow-up information to get in contact with Joshua. I guess, yeah, thank you, Joshua, so much for this really enlightening presentation filled with like great information. I can't wait to apply it myself. And thank you so much for offering yourself up to the community. I know it's quite rare, so I hope that you are get flooded with some of our clients. And I guess just on an organizational note, thank you so much for joining our virtual peer connections tonight. Yeah, thank you, Joshua. And be on the lookout for our events page on our SCIO website for upcoming events, both virtual and in person. And on that note, we will end the recording here. And yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Julie, as well as Joshua. Thank you so much for attending.
I'll give you my email too if anybody wants it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Have a good
Thank you
night,
guys so
everyone.
much again. Pleasure, tickled to be here. So,
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you so much.
yeah, no problem.
Take care.
All right. Cheers. Bye, guys.